Okay, so if it looks like we're gonna fall asleep or the video is very boring, just remember that we're filming at 11:30, Thursday, March 8th. We're very tired, so keep that in mind if the video is really boring. I'm sorry.
So as we showed you in the demonstration with the Lego car about how the assembly line works, the big advantage of it was the time that it took to produce a product. Because they had different people working on specific units instead of one or two people working on a whole product, they were able to standardize production, standardize what people had to work on, which cut the time, obviously, because as you saw in the demonstration, it took seconds for you to put the pieces of the Lego car together, which could be translated into specific groups of people working on specific parts, like such as doors, the chassis, the tires, and etc., which led to cuts in costs because they could standardize the way people worked, standardize their hours, standardize the products that were used, and the manufacturing of said products.
When Ford introduced the assembly line, he not only introduced the assembly line to the industry of cars, but to all industries across the United States. To go along with that idea, when mass production was created, a cost lowering was also applied to all products, and this created a different mindset in consumers from buying because they just needed it, but since the cost was lower, the cars and products were more affordable, so they bought it just to consume.
So the assembly line was adopted by many industries, and we can even see it today. Businesses are able to produce more goods for the higher demand. So essentially, companies like Nike and Adidas and all those big sports brands, they're able to basically cut the cost of the things that you're wearing now because of the assembly line. They're able to make things cheaper that were initially more expensive because they weren't buying and selling things in bulk.
So what this mass production of cars did, especially with the lowering of the price rate of the cars, was raise the economic standard of living for most Americans. What that means is owning a car was no longer a luxury that the select 1% or 2% owned. It became common. It became something that the average American could own, which led to drastic changes in American life. There used to be rural life and city life, but because of the car, people were allowed to travel further distance for their work. They were allowed to live in different areas, which developed the suburbs, an area in between the city and rural life. And Ford can be accredited greatly to the development of said suburbs because the car allowed for greater distance traveled in shorter time, and because more Americans were able to own a car, they were able to push out of the boundaries of the city where most jobs were and live in a I guess a calmer environment that existed in an area between a rural lifestyle, which is more isolated, and the hustle and bustle of a city.
Because the assembly line happened, people began to specialize in certain areas. So if we look at Ford in particular, there'd be people that were designated spots to work on engines and even more specifically parts of the engine. This led to a much safer environment. In fact, so much safer that injuries decreased greatly. The reason that they did this is because if you have more experience in a certain area, you're going to know the ins and outs of it. If you're doing something and you're unexperienced, and if you're in an assembly line in a factory, mind you, and you don't know what you're doing, you have an incredible chance to get hurt, and that's not something that obviously the company wants to deal with, and that's obviously something that as an employee, you obviously don't want happening to you. So because people began to specialize in things, the assembly line made companies not only safer, but more productive.
So to wrap up everything that we've said, Ford's production of the Model T, implementation of the assembly line, and new manufacturing techniques such as standardization of products had a very profound effect on the 1920s era, which we can see in the raising of the standard of living of most Americans by making cars more affordable, and also raising wages of a lot of jobs, providing a lot of jobs, making a workplace safer by specializing people into specific areas rather than trying to make them good at everything. But along with that, it has an effect that we can still see today, because most of what we buy, what we purchase, what is made in this world is made on a mass scale. The food we consume is produced mass. The clothing we wear and the shoes we wear, it's all produced on a mass scale. which in turn changed the mindset of many buyers from purchasing things that we needed to survive to purchasing things because we can afford them.
So we actually did reach out to a guy who had a Model T. It didn't really work out. I don't know what to say.
Zach sent him,
The effort is there.
Zach
And,
sent him an email via.
Search, we found him, dug for him, tried to contact him, but got nothing.
We ended up buying this. Hold up, let me get it. It took like 2 hours to build. Like, it doesn't look that big,
Not to
but
mention
like,
it was $60.
it's probably the most expensive school project I've ever taken place of.